Perspective, presented by the New Orleans Secular Humanist Association, following our few principles of humanism.
We're committed to the use of science and reason for understanding the universe and for solving human problems. We're skeptical of untested claims of knowledge, but we're open to new ideas.
We are concerned with securing justice and fairness in society and in ending intolerance and discrimination. We are committed to the total separation of religion and government.
We affirm humanism as a realistic alternative to the theologies of despair and the ideologies of violence. We reject the concept of an afterlife and believe in living a full and rewarding life here and now.
We value and respect each individual's right to judge and lead their lives according to their own position, as long as it's respectful of other people living in a free society.
We hope you enjoy today's program and others in the weeks to follow. Hello again, I'm Harry Greenberger, the host for this show and the president of New Orleans Secular Humanist Association. We have today one of our favorite guests, Marjorie Esma, who is the executive director of the Louisiana ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union. We're going to talk mainly about activities in the Louisiana legislature that affect civil rights and other matters that our organization is concerned with, which primarily have to do with the First Amendment to the Constitution, the separation of church and state. Marjorie, welcome to our meeting.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you for being here. And I'm just going to throw some subjects out and then let you go. And one that we are very supportive of and very interested in is the attempt to repeal the Louisiana Science Education Act. And this repeal is being led by a very brave young high school student.
Extraordinary young man.
Yes.
A high school kid who...
Now, you might want to refresh our people as to what's in that act and why we, my group, would like to see it repealed.
Well, yeah, the LSEA, it's the Louisiana Science Education Act. It was something that was passed in 2008. That opens the door to the introduction of what they call supplemental materials in science classes, which of course really means things supplemental to evolution, which of course really means creationism, which they don't call that anymore. They now call it intelligent design, but it's all the same thing. And that unfortunately became the law in Louisiana in 2008. It doesn't mandate the teaching of creationism like the original law did back in the 1980s, but it does open the door and allow it in. And this Zach Coplin, a high school senior from Baton Rouge Magnet High, decided that as part of his senior project, he wanted to promote the repeal of this bill, and he has led a very strong effort, got legislation introduced, has gotten signatures and support from scientists all over the world to get this bill repealed.
Now, what was the need or the purpose of enacting that law in the first place? What were the conditions that made them feel they needed this new law?
Well, who knows? I never like to speak to somebody else's motives because I never know somebody else's motives, but clearly there was nothing wrong with the science curriculum. It didn't need to be fixed because it wasn't broken. And earlier drafts of the bill that did not pass specifically mentioned bringing in materials to teach creationism or intelligent design or alternatives to evolution. I think that's what they called it, alternatives to evolution. And during the legislative process, it got amended to remove that language, and it now says religious materials shall not be taught. But of course, we all know that there are no alternatives to evolution other than religious ones. And
there are no scientific alternatives to the evolution.
So almost by definition, if they're bringing in supplemental materials, it's either good science, in which case it's not a problem, or it's religion masquerading as science, in which case it is a problem.
Now, my recollection is that bill went through the House and the Senate almost unanimously.
That's right.
There were a couple of negative votes. And then it was also then signed into law by our governor.
Of course.
Which makes me think that the opportunity to repeal it has a real uphill battle. How do you see that?
It has an uphill battle. One always likes to be optimistic about these things, although I do think that no matter what happens in the legislature, it would surprise me greatly if the governor were not to veto it. Because we know his position on this issue. He's made it very clear what his position on this issue is, and I don't think he's going to compromise his own position. So, I think that law will remain on the books in Louisiana for some time. But on the other hand, you have to really admire the courage and the tenacity of this young man for wanting to do the right thing.
Well, we can only hope him the best. And it is amazing that our governor, whose college degree is in biology,
from an Ivy League university,
would even entertain the concept that there is some alternative to the evolutionary theory. It makes me just question his integrity.
Wow,
you don't have to do that. I do that. Okay. Well, let's see. Let's talk about something else. There's a bill that you're advocating that allows early parole for nonviolent elderly offenders. What's that all about?
Well, we're very concerned about the fact that Louisiana essentially has the highest incarceration rate in the world. We shouldn't be that way. There's something very wrong when we have per capita more people in jail in Louisiana than any other jurisdiction in the world.
And you don't think it's because we have more criminals?
I don't think it's because we have more criminals.
Right.
I think it's because we lock people up for longer periods of time for offenses that probably shouldn't, some of them shouldn't be, such serious offenses in the first place. And what's happening is that we have in our state prisons populations of very old, mostly men, some women, who have been there for life sentences that they've been serving for decades for offenses that were nonviolent offenses. And these are people who are never going to do harm to anybody else again. People who, after a period of decades, have had a chance to reform themselves and not only are costing the government huge amounts of money, but also are depriving both all of us and themselves of the opportunity to become tax-paying, productive members of the community. And so what we're trying to do is get a bill that will allow eligibility for parole. It's not going to open up the doors and let anybody out automatically. It's simply saying that if you've reached a certain age, right now the bill says age 60, and you've done at least 10 years for a nonviolent offense, and you're not a sex offender, then you ought to have the right to earn parole.
To appear before a parole board,
that's right.
Let them
and convince them that you have reformed yourself, that you're not going to commit any more crimes. Some of these people, if you're 60 years old, you can still work for another 10, 15 years if you're in good health. Now think about that instead of spending taxpayers' money to keep people in jail, you can let somebody out and get a job.
You have any idea how much it costs us per incarcerated person in a state prison?
It's tens of thousands of dollars a year, and of course it depends to some extent on how old the person is, because obviously the older you are, the more it costs to keep you in jail because you have higher medical costs and all of that. So it's hard to put an exact number on it, but it's tens of thousands of dollars a year per person.
So when our governments are hard pressed for cash and are going to have to trim expenditures, this would not only be the morally right thing to do for the elderly people, but it would also be helpful in reducing expenditures.
Well,
is that right?
Reducing expenditures and also increasing tax revenues, because not only are you not spending money to keep somebody in jail, you're setting up the potential for them to become taxpayers.
Yes.
So you get money in instead of spending it out.
Now, this is such a reasonable proposal. What do you see as its chances of passage?
Well, it's interesting. There are some real strange bedfellows this year on this bill, partly for the financial reasons. We are in a fiscal crisis, and people are starting to recognize that we need to be more sensible about the way we spend our money. Burl Cain, who's the warden of Angola, has been promoting this issue for a long time. time, he is a big advocate of allowing people the opportunity to earn their way out of jail, of prison. Partly because he knows from the standpoint of prison administration that it creates a better environment for internal discipline if people have something to work towards. If you know you're never going to get out, no matter what you do, then your incentives to cooperate are very different from what your incentives are if you know that as long as you obey the rules and do things right, you might get a chance to get out. So from his standpoint, from prison administration, it makes his job much easier to know that people have some hope. But also, he's very committed to the concept of rehabilitation. And he really believes that people can change their lives, can turn themselves around. And so when you have the warden of the largest prison in Louisiana behind this, and we have some libertarian think tanks behind this because of the role of limited government. So we're really creating a coalition of strange bedfellows, which makes it likely that this might pass.
Any indication as to how the governor feels about it?
The governor has remained very quiet on this, and
why do you suppose he doesn't want to come out and support it?
Well, again, I never like to attribute motives to somebody else. I have no idea. He hasn't said. I don't know what he thinks or what he's going to do, but I think that we at least have a decent shot of getting it through the legislature.
Well, that gives us some hope, doesn't it? For some reason among our elected officials. All right. Well, let's talk about some other things that are happening in Baton Rouge. There is a bill that has been entered to ban all abortions. What's that all about?
Of course, everybody knows that is direct violation of Roe v. Wade. That was introduced by Mr. Labruzzo from Metairie, who specifically said when he did it that he knows it's a violation of Supreme Court precedent, and he did it with the intent that it will be challenged. There's copycat bills cropping up in different states across the country, and it's a movement to basically to get a reconsideration of Roe v. Wade. And what they know is that it's kind of a no-lose proposition, because if it passes Louisiana, which it almost certainly will, then that means that unless and until it's challenged, abortions will be illegal in Louisiana. If it is challenged, which presumably it would be, then they hope that there would be a reversal of Roe v. Wade. And in the meantime, abortions are, well, I guess they would have to allow them in Louisiana once the court challenge is filed. But they know they can't lose on this. And one way or the other. If it's not challenged, then there are no abortions in Louisiana. So it's very dangerous, and it's part of a nationwide movement specifically tailored to get a reconsideration of Roe v. Wade.
Let's say that it passes and the governor signs it, which you, I think, anticipate. Is the ACLU immediately going to take any kind of action?
I will never answer that question. I will.
Marjorie.
I will never
Marjorie,
say publicly what our strategy.
Our audience won't repeat what you say.
Yeah, but you don't know who else is going to watch. No, I will never tell you what our strategy is.
Oh well.
So you're just going to have to, like everybody else, you're just going to have to wait and see.
All right. I assume you will challenge it.
Everybody knows what the ACLU's position is on abortion rights.
Well, we do know what your position is, and I would have to assume that some of the national organizations might also take some action against if it passes in Louisiana. But then when you say that their purpose may be to have it challenged and get it all the way up to the Supreme Court, and unfortunately we have a Supreme Court now who might be willing to reverse Roe v. Wade. Is that possibly the case?
Well, that is exactly what they're hoping, of course. Precisely that. Now we also have a Supreme Court that may change before this this case were to get up there, because of course it would take several years before that could happen.
Yes.
There could be some change in personnel. Who knows?
How can we get rid of some of those Supreme judges? the ones we would like to get rid of.
You didn't mean to ask that question, Harry.
Okay, now we're going to talk about something else. There's just so much going on that disturbs us. I'm looking at a Times-Picayune article from April the 23rd that says a pair of bills focuses on the rights of gays and lesbians.
That's right. And you said there's some things that disturb you, but this is something that actually you can support.
This is what it said. Well, yeah, I can support it. What I'm disturbed about is that I have some question about whether it's going to get through the legislature.
Well, that's true.
All right. But one other bill, House Bill 112, would require public school boards around the state to redefine the code of conduct pertaining to the bullying or harassing of gay, lesbian, transgendered, and disabled students. And then there is another bill, number 211, to prohibit a state employer, not a private company, from discriminating on the basis of sexual orientation, gender identity, or expression and political affiliation. I'm not sure about that last part. Can you tell us, what do you know about those two bills?
Well, let's talk about the non-discrimination bill, because that was something that Governor Blanco had signed an executive order with precisely those provisions when she was governor, which prohibited the state of Louisiana as an employer from discriminating against anybody. Basically, it's a sexual orientation bill. And Governor Jindal, when he took office, rescinded that executive order. So protections that people had were taken away from them.
The governor did not want the people to have that protection.
That's correct.
Now, but let me ask you, as I read this thing, it talks about the discrimination having to do with sexuality, and it says, or expression and political affiliation. What does that mean?
Well, the point is that people shouldn't fear losing their jobs for any reason other than how well they perform their job. It doesn't matter what you believe. It doesn't matter what your personal life is. It doesn't matter who you have a personal relationship with. The only thing that should matter is your performance on the job. And this would provide protection for state employees so that they would be judged only by their competence at the job and not anything else. And that's hugely important, and it needs to be enshrined in the law and not just an executive order, so that the next governor can't do what Governor Jindal did and rescind it.
All right. Now, this bill was filed by Senator J.P. Morrell, who is from our area. Does he have enough? Does he have clout there? Does he have a following that might go along with him, as far as you know?
This is going to be a controversial bill because there are a lot of people who don't support equal rights for people who are different from themselves. Mr. Morrell, I think, has some authority. Whether he can get this through, I think he's got an uphill battle. He's got an uphill battle, but you got to try. You got to try, and it's something that really nobody should ever have to fear losing their job for reasons unrelated to their job performance. That doesn't make any sense, and it doesn't make any sense from the employer standpoint either. You should want everybody to feel like they can come to work and do their best and not worry about being judged by something unrelated to their job performance. It doesn't make any sense.
Now, this other bill that has to do with bullying in schools of gay and lesbian, which I think many states have enacted, or at least has been proposed because of recent events where young people committed suicide. So this would be a bill that says that they have to redefine their code of conduct to prevent this kind of bullying. That's a good bill, isn't it?
That's a tough one. That's a tough one because the ACLU, of course, is very supportive of the rights of gay kids. We've worked very hard to protect the rights of gay kids in schools. We have helped form gay straight alliance clubs. We have just recently helped a girl in Thibodeau who was told that she couldn't wear a tuxedo to her prom, and we intervened and got her to be able to attend the prom in her tuxedo. We've been very supportive of the rights of gay students. Bullying is a little tricky because it's speech, and you don't want to interfere with people's right to speak. So we would certainly be in favor of schools having discipline codes that protect the rights of everybody. Kids who are a little bit different. High school kids can be so mean, and we would want to make sure that everybody has a safe environment in school.
They could bully kids because they're short, or because they got red hair,
or because they wear the wrong color shoelaces that day.
Whatever,
that's right. And obviously, every child has the right to attend school in a safe environment, and not be afraid that they're going to be tormented by other students. Drawing that line in a way that protects safety without restricting speech is a very delicate balance.
I see it. I do know that ACLU is a great advocate for the freedom to speak.
Including to say things we don't like. That's right.
Exactly. All right. Well, anything else about those two bills that you want to add?
No, but there are some other sort of same-sex rights bills coming up as well that would allow adoption by same-sex couples, which now is not permitted in Louisiana. This was tried last year and it failed. I frankly don't expect that it will succeed again this year, but it's one of those things that you have to keep trying until it passes. The idea that the state of Louisiana would deprive children of a home just because it has two parents of the same sex is absolutely counterintuitive. It makes absolutely no sense that we would want to have more children in foster care rather than let them have stable, loving homes just because of who the parents are. If the parents are otherwise qualified, it makes no sense at all.
Well, on that topic, one of our favorite Times-Picayune columnists, James Gill, wrote a column on this topic, and he called it, "How About Half a Right?"
Well, that was on the birth certificate lawsuit.
Oh,
yeah.
That was the birth certificate. Okay, that wasn't the adoption question.
They're closely related, but there is a lawsuit that the ACLU was involved in on an amicus basis. We filed a friend of the court brief in this case that had to do with a gay couple who lived in New York at the time, adopted a child who was born in Louisiana. Now, Louisiana would not have allowed these two men together to adopt the child, but New York did. And they were living in New York at the time, so they did what anybody would do, which was they petitioned the court in the state where they lived to adopt this child, and they got a decree of adoption. And then under the law, when you adopt a child, the state where the child was born is required to issue a new birth certificate with the names of the adoptive parents on it. So these two men came back to Louisiana and said, "Okay, Louisiana, here's our adoption decree."
Because the child was born in Louisiana.
That's right, and that's where the birth certificate originally was. And the state of Louisiana refused to issue the birth certificate with two men's names on it because they said that under Louisiana law, those two men would not be able to have adopted that child. And so a lawsuit was filed, and we won it at the district court level, won it initially at the appellate level at the U.S. Fifth Circuit, and then on a rehearing at the Fifth Circuit, we lost it. And that was the article that James Gill wrote.
Is the Fifth Circuit generally understanding of civil rights issues, or are they hard to get through?
They are known to be one of the more conservative courts in the country.
I thought that was the case.
That is the case, and so that was James Gill responding to that.
Well, we generally approve of his position on just about everything.
Well, he certainly is funny. He makes me laugh.
One other thing that I don't know what may have happened in the state of Louisiana, and I don't know where ACLU stands, but there is a law that was passed requiring a National Day of Prayer, and the law says that the President of the United States is mandated to issue a proclamation every year declaring the National Day of Prayer. Now, I don't know what's happening on a national basis, but I think that law also calls upon governors and mayors to make such proclamations. Has that happened in Louisiana, to your knowledge?
I didn't read about it one way or the other, so I can't answer that. I just don't know. The idea that the President of the United States should be mandated by Congress to do anything raises separation of powers issues, if nothing else. I don't know how Congress has the constitutional authority to mandate the President to do anything.
But that is what is in their law.
That's troubling on that level alone, if for no other reason. But I don't know what happened in Louisiana. Frankly, it's not an issue that I was following.
All right. Well, now we people in my organization and nationally in other secular organizations declare that same date as a day of reason. And in the past, I've gone to the New Orleans City Council,
I know you have.
and I've gotten proclamations declared as a day of reason. And we think that that's what this country should be relying upon, is using their intelligence and their knowledge to make important decisions.
Always. And there is not and should not be a conflict between faith and reason. For people who are people of faith, there's no I shouldn't use the word reason in this context, but reason and faith ought to be able to coexist. And so the idea that you can't have a day of reason because it might somehow undermine a day of prayer it doesn't make any sense.
Well, this coexistence that you refer to, I can support, but not coexisting inside government. Because our Constitution does say government should stay out of religion and religion should stay out of government.
That's right. And people ought to be able to recognize the value of a day of reason and then use that however that means to them, including from a religious standpoint, if that is where they are.
Exactly.
And that's absolutely correct.
Marjorie, we've got a minute or a minute and a half left, and I'd like to let you say anything that you would like our audience to hear.
Well, I always feel like I have to say the ACLU is one of the most misunderstood organizations in this country. People think that we are against religion. People think that we are against all sorts of things. And really what we are about is defending the constitutional rights of everybody in this country on all levels. And I sometimes like to say that the ACLU is the most patriotic organization in the United States because no other organization exists for the sole purpose of defending the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. And I don't know what could be more patriotic than that.
And your organization is a membership organization.
We are a membership organization.
And I assume that you welcome new members.
All the time.
You want to tell the audience how to get in touch with you?
The best way to get in touch with us is on our website, which is LAACLU.org. If you have a complaint that you think your rights were violated, that's the way to let us know about it. There's a little thing that says file a complaint. If you want to become an ACLU member, you can click on the thing that says join. If you want to make a tax-deductible donation, you can click on donate. We always like to hear from our supporters, our friends. So yeah, please go to our website. You can read a lot about the work that we're doing because everything that we do is posted on our website if you want to know more. So yes, thank you.
All right. Well, then I'll put in a plug for the New Orleans Secular Humanist Association. We are also a membership group. We welcome your membership, although you can attend our events without being a member. But we really look forward to having many of you join with us.